Okay, now when I'm solving an equation, I'm going to restrict it to between 0 and 2 pi. So we're asking for our answers need to be in terms of pi. Here we're going to be in radians. If it read 0 to 360, then it'd be answer in degrees. So with these, what I do is I think of sine of x being a variable when you're solving trig equations. So I'm going to replace this as 3x plus 1 equals x. And then I'm going to solve for x. So 1 equals negative 2x, x equals negative 1/2, and I'm going to substitute sine theta equals negative 1/2. So it's asking for where in the unit circle does sine of theta equal negative 1/2. So if you recall the unit circle, sine is negative in the down here in these third and fourth quadrants. So negative 1/2 is the y coordinate. So that is making a 30-degree angle right here. Oops, right here is 30 degrees. Because this is negative 1/2 coordinate and this is negative 1/2. We're asking for radians. So between here and here is going to be pi plus 30 degrees in radians. 30 degrees in radians is 30 degrees, or is pi over 6. So this is going to be 7 pi over 6. So the answer is 7 pi over 6. And this angle is 30 degrees short. So that's 330 degrees, which is 11 pi's over 6. Okay, number 7. I'm going to solve, there's only one tangent, so I'm going to solve for tangent. See, this one had 2 of them, so that's kind of why I converted back to x. So I'm still going to solve for tangent. So if I do that, I subtract 2, and I divide by 2, so I get tangent of theta equals negative 1. So where is tangent negative? So remember, if you remember, tangent is sine of theta over cosine of theta. So tangent is positive over here because sine divided by cosine is a positive, because a positive divided by positive is a positive. Over here it's negative because sine is positive and cosine is negative. Right here it's positive because both sine and cosine are negative, and right here it's negative. So we're looking at in the second and fourth quadrants here. So negative 1 is going to be where sine and cosine are the same, where the opposite over adjacent are the same. That's going to be a special right triangle of a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to draw 45-degree angles in both these. So therefore, this is going to be root 2 over 2. These are the distances. But when I divide root 2 over 2 by root 2 over 2, you get 1, and we're in that negative quadrant. So this is going to be, in terms of radians, 3/4 pi, 3 pi over 4. And this angle right here is going to be pi over 4 short of 2 pi. So it's going to be 7 pi's over 4. Okay, I'll see if I can do a couple more here. So number 8, I have a couple cosines, so I'm going to write this in terms of x. So I have 2x squared plus x equals 1. So you should recognize this as a quadratic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get one side equal to 0, and I'm going to factor this. So you can factor by grouping. So I'm going to have, let's see, x plus 1, x minus 1. This is how it factors. So then I'm going to set, so this means that x equals negative 1/2 and x equals 1. So if I substitute back in, remember this was cosine, so cosine of theta equals negative 1/2, and cosine of theta equals 1. So where between 0 and 2 pi does this happen? So in my unit circle, cosine is negative over here. This is negative 1/2 when you have this 60-degree angle. And it's also negative over here with this 60-degree angle. So in terms of pi, 60 degrees is pi over 3. So this is pi over 3 short. So this angle right here is 2 pi over 3. And this angle all around here is pi plus pi over 3. So that's 4 pi over 3. And we can't forget about when is cosine of theta equal to 1? When is the x-coordinate equal to 1? And that's at 0. But since my original problem asked me to include both 0 and 2 pi, I need to include both 0 and 2 pi here. Okay, I think I have time for one more here. Ooh, I'm going to do number 11. So, because that looks different. So, right here I would solve by factoring. I would take out cosine of theta. I'll pause. Okay, so now what I did here is I factored out cosine of theta, and then I solved each. So cosine of theta equals 0. So when does cosine equal 0? When does the x value equal 0? Up here and down here. So that would be, in terms of pi, it would be pi over 2, and it would be 3 pi over 2. And then when does sine equal positive 1/2? So that's the y value equaling positive 1/2. Oops, I probably didn't draw that good. So sine is 1/2 at 30 degrees. Right here, because this is going up half. And over here in this quadrant, it's 30 degrees and going up half. So 30 degrees, if you remember, is pi over 6. So pi over 6 is a solution. And also pi minus pi over 6. So that's 5 pi's over 6. So I wasn't able to get to all of them, but we can finish the other ones in class.